Hi, it's Pete from MyDrillBench.com. Welcome back. Today we're going to design this 5-stone diamond band. Now, as you can tell, this is a pretty standard band that you can get just about anywhere from a wholesale book. I will show you how to design this particular ring in case you want to make any modifications to it, and it's kind of a good thing to do. You can also make, 3-stone, 5-stone, 7, 9, 11, however many gemstones you want to add into it, and you can modify it. So in this case, I took the top part of the path and I just gave it a slight twist along the z-axis, and you'll notice the diamond path has a little bit of a bend to it, kind of like a small or slight S-curve. So now for the shameless plug, I did start a new website called BlenderGems.com, and I am going to promote it now. I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about those who follow my jewelry designs and 3D modeling for 3D printing. I've created a new website for Blender Gems, and it is BlenderGems.com. So if you're looking for 3D models, you can get some here for free, as well as small fees for others. For instance, I've got some school ring collection that's part of Blender Gems, but if you only want the school ring selection, you can get that for $20. There are some models here for free, and I'll be adding to this every week. And if you're looking for any other information, I'm also starting an FAQ for Blender on little tips and 5-minute tricks that you can use to help yourself. So check that out when you have a chance. What we want to do now is remove our obligatory cube. So we'll select it, press the X key, and delete it. And we are going to make ourselves a ring. So I'm going to start out with, the first thing I'm going to do is go to curve. I'm going to select a circle. I'm going to rotate that along the x-axis. I'm going to hit RX90, and I'm going to come over here, look at this from the side view. We'll change this to 16 millimeters by 16 millimeters, and that gives us a nice round curve. We're also going to go into our curve properties. We're going to bump up the resolution to 24. That gives us a little bit better design. And now what I want to do is make this a little bit thicker. So I'll come down to the curve geometry, and I'll select the extrude, and I'm going to make that, let's see here. I'm going to make this about, let's make it 3 millimeters wide at the top. So a little over 3 millimeters, that'll be good. And the next step I need to do is give this some depth. You can see we've got width, but we need depth. So I'm going to select 1 on my keyboard, on my numeric keypad, and go into side view. I'm going to come over to the modifiers tab, and we're going to add in a solidify modifier. With the solidify modifier selected, I'm going to move this down from the positive to the negative. This will extrude it along the positive or outer rim, and I'm going to make that, this looks good, right about here, about that thick. So now that that's done, I can come over here. I'm going to hit shade flat just to make it so we can see it a little bit better. And I'm going to convert this to a mesh. So I'm going to come over, convert to mesh. And now I've converted that to a mesh. Let's take that ring. Let's move it over to our scene. Let's see here. I'm going to move it right down over here. I'm going to close up our collections, and we're going to call this Shank. That's our ring shank. Okay, so now that our shank is done, I need to make a couple little changes to it. I want it narrower at the bottom than it is at the top. We know it's about 3 millimeters wide at the top. We want to make this a little bit narrower at the bottom. So I'm going to go into edit mode by pressing the tab key. I'm going to hold the alt key down and select this edge loop right there. It should select the entire ring around that property. And make sure that you've got these vertex, edge, and face tools. When you're working with edges, it's always a good idea to select the edge. I'm going to come over to proportional editing. I'm going to select that, and we're going to size this loop, this one ring. We're going to size that along the y-axis. So I'm going to hit S and then Y, and there's our circle of influence. So if I use my mouse wheel, I can change my circle of influence and just bring that up about like so. I'm going to make that a little bit wider. That looks good. So now let's look at this from the side profile, and you can see we have a nice wide band at the top and a narrow band bottom. That looks good. Now, one of the other things I want to do is I want to taper this down along the bottom edge. Now, I like to do it this way. I'm going to hit Shift A. I'm going to add in a mesh and then a cylinder. I'm going to come over to my cylinder properties. I'm going to change that to 100 vertices, and I will rotate that RX90 along the x-axis. Let me turn on my screen keys just in case those of you want to follow can follow. And so I'm going to put that on the right, so it's over here. Okay, so I'm going to select this cylinder that we made, and I'm going to come over to my items tab here. If you don't see this tab here, you press the N key in your 3D viewport and it'll pop that up. With that done, I can come into side view and I can size this up to 16.5 millimeters, 16.5, 16.5, and I'm going to make this 16.5 also. So now I've got a ring in the middle, and just to show you what that looks like, if we go through and move this down, you can see I've got a little opening here. So I'm going to size this down just a bit, size my shank down, and maybe make it a little bit bigger. We'll move our cutout. The cylinder is going to be our cutout. I'm going to move that right to the bottom edge. That will give us a nice tapered view. I'm going to select this cylinder for our cutout. I'm going to hold the shift key down, select the ring shank, and then come down to Boolean. And I am going to do a destructive difference. So I'm going to edit that out. And now you can see we've got a nice narrow and shallow taper to the bottom as opposed to the top. Okay, that looks good. I'm going to turn off invisible so that we can see what's going on here. And let's look at the ring shank from the side again. I'm going to right click on this ring shank. I'm going to come over to Set Origin, Center of Volume, hit Shift S, and I'm going to put that in the middle. Set Origin, Center of Surface, Shift S, Selection to Cursor. Okay, so there I've got it in the middle. And I need to do a couple of things here. We actually want to add 5 stones to the top of this. These are going to be 3 millimeter stones. And I want to have a nice cutout for the ring shank. Well, I have to make a cutout that's going to make our ring cut perfectly. To do that, I'm going to show you a little trick. I'm going to do Shift A. I'm going to add in a cube. Now, you're saying, what am I going to do with this cube? I'm going to size this up a little bit. I'm going to bring that up to the ring shank, about like that. And I'm going to make this a little bit longer. So I'm going to size up just a bit. SX, I'm going to size it along the X axis. And then I'm going to bring that down. And this is what we're going to use for our cutout. But I can't use it the way it is. So I'm going to go into edit mode. I am going to insert a loop cut. So I'm going to select the cube in edit mode and hit Control R. And I'm going to put one single loop cut in the middle. So once that loop cut's there, perfect. That's exactly what I want. I'm going to come over to Face Tools. I'm going to select these 2 faces, and I'm going to size those along the X axis. SX, and then let's turn off proportional editing. SX, and then I'm going to make those a little farther apart so that we get this little taper on the side. And that taper is looking pretty good. I'm going to select all. I'm going to bring this down. All, bring that down so it's like that. Now that's cutting out the inside of our ring shank. Now we're going to be putting in round stones. So to make a round cutout, this is pretty simple. I'm going to make sure I'm in edge select. I'm going to select this particular edge right here. I'm going to rotate that around 180 degrees, hold the shift key down and select this particular edge. And then from the side view or from the front view, I'm going to hit SX and I'm going to pull those out just like so. Okay, that gives me this weird shaped cube that I can make some changes to. I'm going to go back into object mode by pressing tab. With the cube selected, or my cutout, I can now hit Control A and align the rotation and scale. And there's a reason I'm doing that, because we're going to be adding a round cutout to this. I want to round off this particular edge. So I'm going to go back into edit mode. You see those 2 edges are still selected. I'm going to press Control B to add in a bevel, and I'm going to pull that out, and I'm just going to add in a nice round bevel. And that still looks bad, so press Control Z. Let's take those SX, let's make those a little bit bigger, like that. Let's go into object mode. Let's make this a little bit smaller. S, I'm going to bring that in. SZ to make it a little bit taller. 1. Come down. We're going to make some changes to this anyway, but I'm going to go Control A and align the rotation and scale. Go back into edit mode. Now let's try Control B and see if we can get a nice round loop. And I think that looks pretty good, just like so. I'm going to put my loop cuts in there. So I've got beveled edges on both sides, and we're going to leave it like that. I'm going to go back into object mode, and for now, I'm going to bring this down just about like so. I'm going to go in a side view. That's a little bit too long, so I'm going to hit S and then X to size it along the X-axis, just about like so. That looks okay for now. And I'm going to apply a non-destructive difference to my ring shank. So I'm going to select the cutout or the cube that we added. I'm going to hold the Shift key down, select our ring shank. I'm going to come over to non-destructive difference. I'm going to select that, and that will apply a non-destructive difference. As you can see, we can still see the cutout, and that's okay. We can hide that if we want. We press H to hide that. Oops, Control Z. Select our cube, press H to hide it, and now you can see what we're looking at is pretty much just the cutout shape of our shank. So I'm going to add in 3 diamonds, and those 3 diamonds are going to be formed along the arc of the ring shank. And to get that arc, I have to add in a new path. So I'm going to come over to my 3D viewport. I'm going to hit Shift A. We're going to come over to Add Curve, and we're going to add a circle. Again, we're going to size this. First, we're going to rotate it along the X-axis, RX90. And then I'm going to size this by pressing the S key, and then I'm going to drag that up until it's around the perimeter of our ring shank. And I want this to kind of be on the outside perimeter. So I'm just going to scoop it up about like so. And that looks pretty good. If I want a little bit more highlighted, I can move it up or down. But for now, we're going to leave it right there. The next step we have to do is to add in our 5 stones. Now, for our 5 stones, we know we want 3 millimeters because we want it to kind of match the width of the band. So I'm going to come over to the Jewel Craft tab, and if you don't have the Jewel Craft add-on added on, I'll put a link in the upper right corner so you can go click on how to find that and add it to Blender. That is a free add-on that you can use to modify or make jewelry designs with. So with Jewel Craft selected, I'm going to open up my Jeweling tab. I'm going to open up my Object tab also, but what we're going to do is come over to Add a Gem. We've got diamonds selected, which is fine. I'm going to change the size to 3.0 millimeters, and I am going to hit OK. It puts 1 diamond in our viewport, so there's a 3 millimeter diamond. That's perfect. That's what we want. Now I want to add in 5 diamonds along this arc or this path. So I'm going to select the diamond. With the diamond selected, I'm going to hold the Shift key down and then come over and select our new path. Now this path, we'll change that name to path so that we don't get confused. Again, I'll hold that down, Shift, and select our path. We can come over to Jewel Craft and then say Distribute on Curve. I'm going to click that, and you'll see it puts 10 stones along the path. That's the default. We're going to change this to 5. And now we've got 5 stones. We're going to rotate this negative 90 degrees. So put negative 90 in there, press Tab. Now you'll see that they're all facing upright, which is exactly what we want. Now, the starting and end points. I want my, since this is 5 stones, if we look at this from the side, we want our first or center stone to be centered right at the top. And then we want the other diamonds to be right up next against it. Okay, so you can do this a couple different ways. You can change these numbers and rotate these along. I happen to know what these numbers are, so I'm going to do negative 9.5, and I'm going to do 9.5, and that should give us, oops, it did not give us anything, 9.5, and then we're going to change this one to negative 9.5. And that put it at the bottom. Why did it show up at the bottom? Let's move that around because we're still here. Negative 9.5. Okay, so if we look at this from the side, you can see we're perfectly centered there, but we're on the opposite side of our design. So let's move that around. I'm just going to come back over here. We're going to take this, put that right there. Take my end, and we're going to move it right about like that. So we know our diamond's in the middle, and then we have the 2 diamonds on either side. And what I want is for these diamonds to be practically touching, which they are. We want them to be as close as possible. Okay, so that's good. So if we look at this from the side, we've got the placement of our diamonds. It's about where we want them. I can raise and lower them by adjusting the offset. So I can come over here to the offset tool if this hasn't disappeared yet, and I can make changes and make them a little taller, a little shorter. And if I want them a little higher, let's say about there, I'm also going to adjust the position so that they're a little closer together, because that's important for our prong settings. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm happy with that so far. Now I need to make a couple of little modifications to this particular shank, because our shank, if you see, we've got a pretty big gap right here between the ring shank end and the first diamond. So I'm going to select this box. With that box selected, I am actually going to size it along the x-axis. So I'm going to hit S, X, and I'm going to move that. Well, let's go unhide our, where's our cutout? There's our cube. We're going to call this cutout top. And we're going to unhide that. There we go. I'm going to bring this down into our scene, close our collection. Okay, so there's our cutout top. We've unhid it. We've selected it. If I hit S, X, I can make little changes to that to get it right about here. And you can see now we're shortening up, or making that little gap in between the ring shank and the diamonds a little bit smaller. I'm going to make that a little bit smaller even more, right about there. Okay, so if I look at this from the top view, I'm going to hide the cutout again. So now you can see we've got these diamonds placed. They're pretty much just about touching each other. If we zoom in, you can see they're just about on the edge of each other, but they're covering up the outlines here. So now I need to make my gallery. My gallery is going to be the bits and pieces that make up the parts that hold the diamonds. So I can do that very easily, and I'm going to do that pretty simply with a torus. So I'm going to hit Shift A to add. We're going to come over to Mesh, and we're going to come down to Torus. Now there's a default torus. We don't have to worry about how big it is, but I am going to change the minor segments from 12 to 24, just to give us a little bit more detail. And I think I'll change the thickness of this just a little bit. So I'm going to bump that up just a tad, just to make it a little bit beefier, just about like so. Okay, so there's my torus. I like that torus. It works good for me. I'm going to hit Shift D to duplicate that and press Enter. So now there's actually two toruses here, as you can see, 1 and 2. Okay, so with this first torus selected, I'm going to do the same thing I did with the diamonds, and I'm going to make them distributed along that path. So I'm going to select the torus, hold the Shift key down, and select my path. There you go. It's a little tough to select that path. If you have a little problem, just practice and you'll get it. We're going to come over to Distribute onto Curve, and you can see it places those toruses right underneath our diamonds in exactly the position we want them to be, which is perfect. Okay, that's because we made those changes when we did the diamonds, and we're just mirroring along that path just the same way. I want my offset to be a little bit lower, so with those toruses selected, I'm going to adjust my offset and bring those down just a little bit, about like so. And I want those to be roughly at the top of my ring. Now it looks like they're a little bit lower, so I'm going to bring those up just a little bit. So as we zoom in here, you can see the top of the torus meets about the top of the ring shank. That works for me. Now we need to do the same thing with the second torus. We're going to select that. We're going to hold the Shift key down, and we're going to come over and select our path. So with those two selected, I'm going to do exactly the same thing and hit Distribute to Curve. Now, we need to make a change to the offset because it's exactly where the other toruses were. So I'm going to bring that down to the bottom part of our ring. And just zoom in here so we can see it. And I'm just going to adjust this number over on the side until I get those toruses to match with the bottom part of our ring shank. That looks good so far. I'm happy with that. I'm going to click off of that. Now, there we go. We've got a nice shaped ring. I think that works pretty good. I have to make the heads and prongs. I'm also going to make one more change. You can see that these toruses are not quite touching the ring shank, so let's grab this cutout that we had before and let's unhide it. Let's select it and then hit Shift, or size rather, X, SX, and I'm going to bring that in so that it's about like so. And now you can see it's actually touching our toruses. It's about what I want to do. I can make some modifications to this later. I'm going to make that a little bit smaller, just about like that. Okay, and I'm going to do SY to make that a little bit narrower so that it loops around our toruses. Perfect. Let's hide that again so we don't have to see it. And we're going to leave that off just the way it is because we won't be using that again. The next thing I have to do is start adding in prongs. Now, these prongs are going to hold the diamonds. They're also going to attach to each of these toruses, and they're going to perform two functions. They're going to hold our gallery together as well as hold our diamonds in place. The goal, obviously, here is to make one particular ring shank. So the ring shank is going to have these heads built into it. To do that, we're going to do that not the way you would normally do it by selecting all of the diamonds and setting all 4 prongs at once. In this case, we're going to do one side at a time. So I'm only going to be adding 6 prongs to this particular ring on one side of the ring shank. So we're going to add a prong to here, 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 and here, and one last one on that side. So I'm going to select one of the diamonds. I'm going to come over to my Jewel Craft tab right here. Under where it says Add Gem, you can see it says Select by Trait. I'm going to come over here and select by Stone. So I've selected all 5 diamonds. That's perfect. It's exactly what we want. The next thing I want to do is come over to the Prongs tool under Jeweling. I'm going to hit Prongs. And you can see it adds in 2 prongs. That's not going to work for us. We're going to add in just 1 prong. I'm going to change the dimensions of the prong, and I'm going to make that 1.1 millimeters. I like nice beefy prongs on my rings just to make sure that everybody's going to be happy when they get their ring. Let's take a look at this from the side, and I want to change the position of this. You can see we've got 5 diamonds and 5 prongs, so we still have to deal with 1 more, but we're going to get there in a minute. So I'm going to rotate or use the position tool to place these where I want them. And let's just take a look at this from the top. And I'm going to zoom in here. And I'm going to move these about here. Under intersection, intersection allows us to move in or outward from the particular diamond we're working with. I'm going to change that position, and let's go back to 3, 1, 9, and let's take a look at this. The angles of our prongs are really, really off. So I can come over to alignment and start playing with the alignment tool, and I'm going to align them about like this. So that here's our center diamond, and we've got about the same angle on these 2 particular prongs. Now I'd like my prongs to come down to the bottom part of the gallery, so I'm going to come over to the dimension side of the prong presettings, and I'm going to add in some length to the prongs themselves. So I'm going to bring those in just like that. That works good for me. I like the way that looks. Okay, so we've got 5 diamonds and 5 prongs, but that leaves us with 1 here that we still have to deal with. So I'm going to select this particular diamond only. Come over to the Jewel Craft tool, press prongs. We're going to select 1 prong, so change that to 1. Change our dimensions, if you remember, 1.1 millimeters. And the bottom is going to be a little bit longer, but we have to arrange it first. So let's move this first into position. So I'm going to move this over to here. I want that to be right about like that. I want the angle to be a little bit different, so we're going to come over and we're going to look at the angle. We have to adjust its alignment. So I'm going to move that in like so. And now you can see it kind of follows the path of all the other diamonds. I like the way that looks. We don't necessarily have to give it any more depth because it's going to be added to the ring shank itself. Looks good so far. I'm liking the way that feels. Okay, we've got all 6 prongs in position. Now what we want to do is take these prongs. So you're going to select the first prong. You're going to hold the shift key down, and you're going to grab each of the other 5 prongs. And make sure you only grab the prongs. Now this is a pretty fun trick because we want to mirror this on the opposite side. And in Jewel Craft, because those prongs are part of the diamonds, we can use the Jewel Craft tool to do the mirroring. We're going to mirror it along the y-axis, which is the green line here. So I'm going to select the mirror tool. I'm going to come over to Y and put a check mark in Y. And there we have our ring shank. Okay, that looks pretty good so far. I like the way that looks. The next thing I want to do before I go any further is to actually go into edit mode, and I want to add in a light beveled edge to the outer perimeter. I've applied the rotation and scale to this, so I'm going to hit tab to go into edit mode. I'm going to hold the Alt key down and select one of these edge loops here along the side. I'm in face mode, so make sure you select your edge tool here. Let's come back over and grab an edge. Alt, so I've got that outer perimeter selected there. I'm going to hold the Shift key down, Alt key down, and then grab the other side, so both of those sides now are selected. That's exactly what I want. Now you can see while we're in edit mode, our Boolean is not being applied, so you can see the entire selection. Don't worry, it's just the way Booleans work when you do non-destructive. I'm going to press Control B. I'm going to move my mouse out, and I'm going to add in a little bit of a bevel. Now we can adjust the bevel if we want a sharp curve, like a chamfer edge, or if we want to make it a little bit rounder. So I like the round edge. I think that's a good look right there, and that's perfect for 3D printing. And now I'll go back into object mode, and you can see our application of our Boolean is visible, but we want to make that permanent. So you can see when we select our shank and we go over to the modifiers tab that we have this modifier applied to our ring shank, and that's the Boolean. If I come over to this little drop down arrow and hit apply, it's applied now. So I can get rid of this cutout that we made to do that cutout. So I'm going to hit X, then select delete. And you can see it's cut out and it's gone. That gives us this nice, I'll just make sure that we're going to shade this smooth. And that gives us this nice rounded edge on the top of our ring, which I like a lot. I'm going to also come over here and I'm going to shade smooth these toruses that we made, just because I like the way they look. There's not much I can do with the, well, I can select all of the prongs, and I think I'll do that. And shade them all smooth. It's weird how they all kind of changed colors here, but that's okay. We're going to take care of that in a minute. Shade smooth. Okay. So everything is kind of shaded smooth except for this one, this one. Okay, so our rings are shaded smooth. Everything's applied. Now I want to actually make these part of the ring. So what I'm going to do is just quickly select a few of these prongs, a couple of these toruses, and then I'll grab our ring shank, and then I'm going to come over to the Boolean tool, and I'm going to join them together with a union. And we can either use Blender's built-in Boolean options or the Bool tool or Booltron. And I'm going to try using Blender's, and we'll just apply that. That looks good. Now let's see here. I'm going to hit Shift and select the next group here. And I'll come over to Union. That might take a couple seconds to think here, and then it joins them together. Hold the Shift key down, select the next group, and then do Union. Now we got to grab these prongs on the opposite side, so I'll grab that one, that one, that one, that one, this one, and we'll hit the Union key. Now our ring is all one piece. If we press Tab, you can see, if we hit all, that it is all one piece, completely Boolean together. This is a good time to hit Shift N to make sure the faces are normal. And if you ever want to determine whether or not you have any faces that are facing the wrong direction, you can come over here to the face alignment, which I believe is right here, face orientation. And if you select that, what you're going to look for are faces that have turned red. If they have turned red, those are not in the correct position. You'll have to manually go through and change each one. We're going to come over and turn that off so that we look normal here. I'm going to change this over to a white material. We're going to render this out just so you can see what it looks like. Now if we render that out, we've got a nice white gold ring, or something that looks like a white gold ring. And I'm going to come over to shade flat just to see what it looks like. It's actually going to stay pretty smooth. And so far so good. There's our diamonds, our prongs. I like to leave in my castings some heavy prongs only because these are going to get cut down. It's better to have too much prong and not need it than not enough prong and needing to add metal to it, because it's just easier to take away than it is to build up. So that's done. Now we can take this model, we can export this out, and we can save it to a file for 3D printing. So I'm going to come over, I'm going to select my ring shank, and don't forget to save your model. I'm going to call this, we'll call this 5 stone ring 2. How about 3, since I've already got 2? And I'm going to save that out. Okay, so there's our ring shank. We saved the Blender file. Now I'm going to come over and I'm going to export it. So let's select our ring shank. Let's come over here, File, export, and we're going to export this as an STL because I'm going to bring that into our slicer. So we're in our correct directory. It's called 5-stone ring 3 STL. We're going to hit selection only, and we know the size is correct, so we're going to leave that there. I'm going to hit export STL and let the computer work. It should only take a second. And now let's go. I'm going to bring up Sheet 2 Box since that's what I use to do my slicing. I see that Sheet 2 Box now has the Pro version out. It's $170 if any of you want it. I don't think I'm going to spend $170 for a Sheet 2 Box, to be quite honest with you. I'm going to delete that. I'm going to make this a little smaller so we can see what I'm going through with Sheet 2 Box. Okay, so there's Sheet 2 Box. And I'm going to hit File, Open, and we're going to open up that STL. I know it's in a folder on my drive, so I'm going to come over to my untitled drive under Diamond Band, and we're going to select this STL. And there's our STL. It looks really good. And a couple of things that you'll need to remember is when you're 3D printing this in castable resin, you should always remember how much of your casting material causes shrinkage. I run about 8%, so I'm going to scale this up. I'm going to scale it up completely on all 3 axes to 108 or 8% larger. Now, I also like to print my rings at a slight angle, so I'm going to rotate this on the x-axis, and we're just going to come over here and maybe make that 10 degrees. That should be fine. And one of the things that the Pro version of Sheet 2 Box has is separate settings for your supports as well as your product that you're printing. But I'm going to use the cheap free version. That's just the way I'm going to do it. I'm going to select this up with just one ring. I'm going to print this with medium supports. So I'll come over and hit all. And I'm going to take a look and see how that came out. It looks pretty good. It's got supports in all the right places. And I'm pretty sure with my settings for either of my printers and the iFun castable resin, this is going to be fine. So my iFun castable resin that I use, I'm getting about 8% shrinkage on that. Just letting you know, your castable resin may be different, but all resins when they're printing will shrink a little bit. So you want to accommodate for that. So guys, that's how we do that. I can go out there and send this out to my 3D printer at any time. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, and only 10% of people watching this video are subscribers, hit that subscribe button and become a member of the myjewelrybench.com place. If you want this model, you can get this model on blendergems.com. I'll do several versions of it. This one will be free, and you can pick it up at any time. Thanks a lot, guys, for watching, and have a great day.